Creepypastas really are something, aren't they? Unlike other subgenres within horror, or really subgenres in general, creepypastas probably have the most potential for variety in storylines and settings. I believe this is because the concept of a creepypasta is extremely generic, basically being any online literary horror story. I just find it fascinating how a story about a guy traveling to another dimension where Neanderthals are the dominant species and wage war on other species of human can fall into the same subgenre as a story about a guy playing a scary version of Mario. This variety is a double-edged sword though, because for every story like Psychosis or The Showers, there's literally thousands of stories that are they're just shit, man. Today I have a prime example of a story that's just objectively dumb, and it goes by the simple title of Out with a Bang. Now this is probably the most well-known creepypasta I've tackled so far. It's gotten multiple ratings on YouTube that have thousands of views. It's still on the Creepypasta Wiki under their historical archive tag, and it even has a fan comic, I think. So needless to say, this is easily the most known story I've tackled so far. It's also seemingly the oldest, with the posts on the original creepypasta.com being from all the way back in 2009, 11 years ago. With that said, am I going to take it easy on this story because of its age and popularity? No. Okay, enough filler. Let's jump right into this. So our story begins with nameless protagonist number 457 telling us that he's going to take his own life. Literally, that's the first line. The author pulled a blood whistle before blood whistle was even a thing. Anyway, he decides to leave behind a video to describe why he's decided to take his own life. Yes, a video, not a note, which is a weird detail considering this story was originally written as a story and not a script. He recounts a story from when he was playing Cowboys and Indians with his old friend Johnny. He describes how while they were playing, he tripped Johnny before pointing his finger gun at him and saying, "Bang." Then Johnny's head fucking explodes. Yeah, so this story, if you didn't already know, revolves around the fact that our main character, let's go with Ivan, can shoot mine bullets from his finger guns when he says bang. So Ivan blows up his friend's head before he explains how he forgot most of what happened immediately after the incident and how the police essentially wrote off Johnny's head exploding as a falling bullet accident. Ivan for the rest of his childhood doesn't play any games revolving around shooting people, reasonably so. It's not so reasonable as what happened when Ivan, presumably an adult at this point, is approached by a little girl at the park who holds up a toy gun to him and pretends to shoot him. Ivan plays along with this kid that clearly doesn't know what stranger danger is until the girl asks Ivan to shoot her back. Now, bit of a multiple choice question here. If you had the power to shoot people with your fingers and a little girl asked you to shoot her, would you A, say no to the child, B, aim a little to the side of the girl, or C, literally anything else besides shooting her point blank in the stomach? So yeah, Ivan, for some reason beyond human comprehension, aims and shoots this random girl in the stomach with his finger. In shock, she blows the fuck up. Ivan manages to avoid jail. How? Doesn't say. I'm guessing the police thought a fucking meteor fell out of the sky or something. Swiftly moving along, Ivan then explains how he pointed his finger at his girlfriend during an argument and blew her head off as well. He points out how he didn't even say bang this time, which raises the question how these vague mind bullets even work. Like, has he never pointed at someone during an argument before? Wrapping up, he says he can't do this anymore, and that all he needs to do is point his fingers to his temple and say it. And then he makes this pun. At least I'll go out with a bang. And considering this is a video, apparently, the story ends with the main character offing himself. And that's it. So this story, I've got a bone or two to pick with this story. So let's get into the main issue I have. So you might have noticed that throughout this summary, I've been a bit harsh towards the main character. That's because Ivan over here is kind of a gigantic moron. So the first death, that was basically unavoidable. I'll give old Ivan over here that, because he was completely unaware of the fact that he's basically immune from the X-Men. But the next two, you'd think someone who went through the traumatic experience of accidentally blowing his friend's head off by pointing his finger at him would try to, avoid pointing his fingers at people a little bit harder. Like, it's not even implied in the story that he grew up to believe the cop's explanation for what happened. As far as we as the audience know, this dude knew he was capable of doing this during the second killing, and he did it anyway. Why? Like, the implication in the story seems to be that he didn't want to upset the kid. So the main character weighed his options and actually decided blowing up the little girl's stomach was more reasonable than upsetting her in public. And the third death, you could argue, is better than the second. At bare minimum, he did not know that he could still shoot people without saying bang. That said, again, you'd expect someone who at this point has murdered 2 people by pointing at them would be far less inclined to point at someone, especially someone they're in a relationship with. The main character is just so idiotically reckless that it actively takes away from what the story is building up to. Because all of the events after the first death were the result of the main character being cartoonishly inept. So that's the main problem story-wise, but there's another issue I pointed out in the summary. One which is frankly more confusing than the main character being written like the skull's full of sand and marbles, but it still needs to be talked about. So this story is essentially supposed to be a transcript of Ivan's suicide video. And for the life of me, I can't understand why. Like, genuinely, this story being a video transcript opposed to a letter or note only takes away from the story overall. First things first, the writing style of this story, especially at the beginning, is incredibly jarring given the situation the main character is in and the format that this is apparently supposed to be. I'm going to read a line verbatim, and I want you to keep in mind that this is being thought up on the fly by someone who accidentally just blew off their wife's head and is about to kill themselves. The sun was setting over his back fence, warm orange and reds shining through the bone-white slats like a creamsicle against pearly white teeth. Does that sound like something someone who is clearly in distress and is also making up as they go would write? Would this problem still exist if it was a note instead of a video? To an extent, yes. But at the very least, you can edit a document as you go. This is supposed to be a transcript. He's just making this up as he goes, apparently. Along with this, I need to point out that the formatting of this story is just off, both from a writing perspective and within the context of the story itself. The beginning of the story, as pointed out before, has detailed, almost purple prose type imagery and descriptions, which just doesn't make sense considering, again, this dude just high-mooned his girlfriend and is about to kill himself. With this context, the ending, which is more rushed and emotional, feels more realistic. That opens up another problem. One found in a couple creepypastas, most notably Abandoned by Disney, where from a writing perspective, the story feels terribly rushed by the end. 7 paragraphs are dedicated to describing the first 2 stories, while 1 paragraph is dedicated to the death of his girlfriend. And after that, there's only 2 sentences left in the story. It feels like the author just ran out of steam towards the end and decided to wrap shit up. And that's the problems I have with the story itself for the most part. So overall, what do I think of this classic creepypasta? Well, let me tell you, if you haven't gotten the hint yet already. Is this the worst story I've looked at? No, not even remotely. But I still wouldn't call this story worthy of its cult status even on my most generous days. The main character is easily the stupidest we've encountered in the series so far, because even the giraffe man at minimum knew not to go out and study giraffes after what happened. It really makes it hard to take anything in this story seriously because all I can think of is how every problem presented wouldn't have happened if Ivan had any common sense. And on top of that, the video format is just a baffling addition, honestly. It only adds more problems for the story, and for the life of me, I can't understand why the author did it. Remember, this story is from 2009, before creepypasta narrations really blew up on YouTube and such. So I don't think this story was meant to be read by narrators. It's genuinely mind-numbing why this isn't a suicide note or something. I give it a 3.5 out of 10. Frankly, I think it's subpar at best the way it's written. If the story was longer and maybe if it was made almost like a journal where you can see the main character's state of mind deteriorating over time, maybe it'd be better. However, I can't say I'm fond of this version I've read. Old school trash. Anyway, thank you for watching as always, guys. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have a story you'd like me to check out, drop the story in the comment section below. Next week, I'll be covering another fan suggestion, and oh boy, Rusty Fingers has some real competition. See you guys then.